Hi everyone and welcome to my review of Licence to Kill, the 16th James Bond film, and it's the final one directed by Glen, and the final Dalton one. And this is the Dalton film of the Bonds that I absolutely love. If you've seen my Living Daylights review, you know that I didn't really like that film, and there's this split, as I've said, between them two films about which one's the best, and I am hands down for Licence to Kill, because not only is it far better than The Living Daylights, but I think it's among the very best Bond films, and it's an absolutely stunning film for me. Dalton, this was the film where he got to really give a performance that matched the film, the quality, but also the tone of the film. It was this was for the time of Bond, it was the most violent Bond film, and there was a lot of people who didn't like that, and Bond was kind of it suffered for that. 1989, and there wouldn't be a Bond film until GoldenEye, which was 95, and not a lot of people at the time were fans really of the way Bond was going here. But for me, this has always been one of my favourites, actually. And you can tell straight away it's inspired by Scarface, for me, definitely. The colour tone, but also all the plots and involving drugs, the cartels and the drug lords, and just the actual violence itself, and the way it's kind of stylised a little bit, excessive violence. And the villain even, I think it's definitely inspired by Scarface, and of course Scarface, well, it's one of my favourite films, the Brian De Palma one. But this is definitely takes a lot from that, and I think the violence is great in this film. I don't think it's gratuitous or anything like that, and it's just one of my favourite Bond films. So the opening scene as well, it's a great opening scene. Some stunning action, shootouts and everything, and the parachute scene as well. It's just amazing. Going into that as well, that the opening credits, a return to form definitely, and the theme song sung by Gladys Knight is stunning. Among my favourite Bond themes, actually. The actual score would be composed by Michael Kamen. Because John Barry never really, his final score for Bond was of course The Living Daylights, but I think the score here, despite Barry's absence, departure, is a great score throughout the film. And the opening title sequence is a return to form, as I say. The way it's put together, it's really good. And the way this film, I think that one of the things it does straight away is gives you this kind of there's this emotional thing going on, this connection that drives the plot, and Bond's motivations in this film. This stuff happens early on with Felix, and basically Bond is on this personal vendetta, chasing the villain, really, going, infiltrating, and to try and get revenge, you could say. And the way that's done, it kind of just it adds that that motivation for Bond, between Bond and the villain. That drive that's not been seen in a lot of Bond films, really. Of course there's ones like Casino Royale and stuff that do that, but there hadn't been. Overall, there's not much Bonds that really do that. Certainly not as well as this. And the villain himself, played by Robert Davi, he plays Sanchez in the film, and he's one of the best Bond villains for me. Robert Davi was in quite a lot of things, and here he's kind of just born to play this villain. Stunning performance. And just a great actor, and it's perfectly suited this film, and the way he goes up, him and Bond together when they're on screen, Timothy Dalton, is just brilliant. And he just gives such a chilling performance. He's kind of got that charm as well to him. But yeah, no, he is ruthless. And obviously the things he does in the film is just, yeah. But what a stunning villain, and his side villain Benicio del Toro, he plays Dario, and he's a great pairing really with him. It's kind of just yeah. Benicio del Toro is he's an actor who he can be great in some things like The Usual Suspects, this and a few other things, but at times he can be a bit too comical for the film and just go way overboard. It was actually kind of like that in The Last Jedi, which I hated, but I'll review that at some point. A review for another day, but yeah, no, he didn't work in that, and there's a couple of things he just doesn't quite work in, but here he's perfect. Really, he adds that humour as well, but it's just a great performance that suits the film well. And the Bond girl, played by Carey, Lowell, one of my favourite Bond girls, actually. And the way she is actually a character in this film, and she actually has emotions. Was great, and her performance is really good, and her romance, I think, with Bond in this film is one of the best romances of Bond, for me. And the way she's involved in the film and the plot, and the way their romance as well. Once again, like the best Bonds, really. Most of the best Bonds, the romance drives the film just as much or more than the actual plot itself. But yeah, no, she was great in this film, and definitely one of my favourites. And a great supporting cast, the rest of the supporting cast. In the climax, the final moments of sequences as well, there's some great characters in there, and there's some really funny moments involving some of them characters, and just that whole sequence at the end is stunning. But yeah, no, the action in this film as well, it's absolutely stunning. It's more grounded again, like For Your Eyes Only was, and I didn't feel a lot of the Bonds before this had been very grounded at all. They were more just over the top, unbelievable a lot of the time. But this just felt really real. It felt visceral, and it's just some of the stunts that go on here are absolutely stunning in this film. And it's every action sequence is just stunning, really. And the character moments that are involved within them scenes, it never loses touch of that either. I felt with The Living Daylights, it kind of there was loads of action put together. It wasn't even that good action in the second half, and there wasn't any moments, really, character moments that were within them action scenes, so it just got repetitive for me. But here they managed to balance that out perfectly. And John Glen, well, spoilers for the final rating, but I think this is his best film for Bond. I think it's better than For Your Eyes Only. And I think this was the best directed Bond film of the 80s. I know that's not saying much, but it does when how much I praise For Your Eyes Only, but the other Bond films of the 80s I've not been much of a fan of. But here he does an actually stunning job of directing the film, and the editing in this film is stunning. Visceral fight scenes and action sequences, absolutely stunning, and just so well put together, and feel so so visceral, as I say. And of course, when you've got the score and the Bond theme as well, playing different moments within these scenes, it just all comes together. It all comes together perfectly. That's what I'm trying to say. All the elements, really, of filmmaking come together perfectly in this Bond film. The performances are stunning. Q as well. He had a great role in this film, I think. And I always like to see more involvement with Q, unless they're using him, like in Octopussy in a campy way, a stupid way, and he kind of gets in the way of things. No, but when he, generally when they can do it well, Q's involvement in more Q means, well, yeah, just more enjoyable Bond, because I think Q's, you know, overall a great character in Bond, and I loved his involvement in this film, and he adds that warmth to the film as well. Desmond Llewelyn, you know, it's just perfect. There will never be for me a better Q than that. But yeah, no, it just adds something again to the film, and the pace of this film as well. It just unfolds perfectly. Every act is absolutely stunning. You've got, you know, things that just drive the film continuously, and you know, then personal motivations for Bond and the Bond girl as well. It makes for a better, a more richer experience, and it just kept my attention more, because I was more involved in the characters and their motivations. And yeah, no, it's just once you've gone through some of these previous Bonds, it's great to see that you've actually got some human moments, really, and stuff, and it's kind of real characters, fleshed out characters, and there's, you know, loads of twists and turns in this film. You know, it really makes you on the edge of your seat, really. And you know, because the villain is so menacing as well, you know, when things do happen and stuff, you really feel you're really behind Bond in this film and hoping that nothing happens. And you know, just a great performance by the villain Robert Davi, playing Sanchez. You know, it just makes it so much better. You know, this film hasn't really got any flaws for me, and you know, every act, as I say, is absolutely stunning. The final sequences are some of the best Bond action scenes put together for me, and as well, you've got the Bond girl coming into play a lot more as well there, helping out Bond, you know, as well. I feel that most of the Bond girls are kind of useless, aren't they? Let's admit it. But she's one of the Bond girls that actually you know, can fight and help Bond out, and you know, the way it comes together at the end is just perfect, and you know, that romance, the payoff there when it all comes together, just brilliant. I love this film, and you know, due to the fact that I can't really find any flaws in it, and you know, it was absolutely stunning, and you know, I loved every moment of the film. You know, I was completely invested in the more, you know, grounded plot. You know, it was you know, it was to do with drugs and everything, not these like had previously a lot. You know, being these, you know, nuclear things going on, World War III and everything. Some things, you know, the way they were done, you know, like in Moonraker as well. You know, they weren't believable, really, and yeah. They were just too over the top, too much gadgets, and here this is more of a return to the grounded Bond. You know, well, it's extremely violent for a Bond film, but you know, it all works perfectly, and the tone of this film is just so consistent. There's never a moment where it breaks tone, and Dalton is absolutely stunning, and he's allowed to give, as I say, that performance that matches the tone. Because you know, you've got so much. It takes itself so seriously. You know, it has some fun. There's some comical moments, but because of that, Dalton is allowed to give a performance that matches it. And you know, he can really. At least he had his Bond film, which he was amazing in, for me. And I think every Bond really has actually had, you know, their Bond film that was great. Connery for sure. As I say, George Lazenby as well, of course, his only Bond film for me, well, you'll find out where I put that in the ranking, but it was a stunning film, one of my favourite films. You know, Roger Moore with The Spy Who Loved Me, and For Your Eyes Only. Dalton here, at least he got this film. As I say, every Bond really has had their film where at least, you know, it's a great film, and they're great in it, really. yeah, so due to how much I love this film, and I can't really find any flaws, you know, it all just came together perfectly. For one of my favourite Bond films, favourite you know, action films, I'll give it 100% plus, tier 3. It's up there with Goldfinger for me, and From Russia with Love, and you know, all these Bonds that are right up there with the best Bonds, and yeah, just I loved every moment of this film, like I always have done. I've always loved this film, and I don't get personally how you know, The Living Daylights could be put above this, because I really think this does everything perfectly, and The Living Daylights was a bit of a mess for me, tonally and everything like that. But yeah, no, this is as again it is, well, it marks the return to consistently good Bond films for me. You know, this, then you've got GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, you know, and The World Is Not Enough. Yes, then you have one of the Bonds which I'll get to, which takes a dip. But really, these, you know, these 4 Bonds in a row, just a great consistency once again, or at least a solid consistency. You know, after all these, you know, the 80s Bonds, as I say, wasn't overall that consistent, and it had a lot of lows. But yeah, stunning film. John Glenn's final directed Bond, and what a way to leave it. You know, Dalton's second and final Bond film, absolutely stunning. And yeah, everything just worked perfectly. A Bond film that's one of my favourite Bonds and among my favourite films. So thanks for watching my review. Next up is GoldenEye, which of course is one of the most popular Bonds, and for good reason. I'll be reviewing that next. Of course, Pierce Brosnan's debut. So, thanks for watching.